My name is Rachel. I'm 28 years old, and I'm standing at my sister's engagement party watching my entire life change in front of 200 guests. The massive outdoor screen behind the band just lit up with my face, not as the family disappointment everyone believes I am, but as the creative director behind this year's most talked about Super Bowl commercial. My sister Madison, who just spent the last 20 minutes telling everyone how my little hobby would never amount to anything, has gone completely silent for the first time in her life. Before I share how I got here, let me ask where you're watching from today. If you've ever been underestimated by family, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of sweet vindication. What happens when the black sheep becomes the success story? Let's find out together. Growing up as Madison's little sister meant living in a shadow so large, I sometimes wondered if I'd ever see sunlight. Madison was everything our parents dreamed of in a daughter. Valedictorian of her high school class, captain of the debate team, prom queen, who somehow made it look effortless. When she got into Harvard Law School, our parents threw a party that lasted 3 days. Every relative within a 500-mile radius heard about their golden child's achievement. I was the artist, the dreamer, the one who spent hours sketching stories and creating worlds on paper. While Madison collected academic trophies, I collected rejection letters from art schools and disappointed sighs from our parents. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my teenage years. Family dinners turned into progress reports on Madison's achievements, followed by concerned discussions about my future. When Madison announced her engagement to Brett Hamilton, heir to a tech fortune and founder of his own startup, our parents acted like they'd won the lottery. Here was their successful daughter marrying into even more success. The wedding would be the social event of the year, and everyone who was anyone would see that the Morrison family had made it. 2 weeks before the engagement party, Madison decided to visit my tiny studio apartment in the city. It was the first time she'd bothered to see where I lived in the 3 years since I'd moved out. I was working on storyboards for a major campaign papers, spread across every surface, my walls covered with concept art and color palettes. She walked through my space with the same expression someone might wear at a particularly depressing museum exhibit. "You're still drawing cartoons at 28, she said, picking up one of my sketches with her manicured nails like it might be contaminated. "Rachel, when are you going to grow up and get a real job? This is just embarrassing. Mom tells her book club you're in marketing because she can't bear to say you're still playing artist." I didn't tell her about the contract sitting in my desk drawer. I didn't mention that the cartoons she was mocking were part of a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign. I just smiled and let her lecture me about responsibility and maturity the way I always had. But this time was different. This time I noticed her taking photos of my workspace with her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. "Just want to remember this phase of your life," she said when I caught her. "You know before you finally come to your senses." A week later, I found out she'd shared those photos in the family group chat with laughing emojis calling it Rachel's kindergarten classroom. Our cousins had a field day making jokes about finger painting and nap time. That was the first betrayal, though I didn't realize it was just the beginning of a coordinated campaign to keep me in my place as the family failure. My journey in advertising hadn't been easy. I started as an unpaid intern at 22, fetching coffee and making copies while telling myself it was all part of paying dues. 18-hour days became my normal sleeping on the office couch more often than in my own bed. I watched senior creatives take credit for my ideas and learned to bite my tongue when clients dismissed my input because of my aid. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Morrison Technologies, a Fortune 500 company facing a massive rebranding challenge, opened their campaign to all levels of staff at our agency. They were bleeding market share to younger, hipper competitors, and nothing in their current advertising spoke to anyone under 50. I spent 3 sleepless nights crafting a presentation that reimagined their entire brand identity, focusing on emotional storytelling rather than technical specifications. When I presented to the CEO, David Chin, his eyes lit up in a way I'd never seen from a client before. "This is exactly what we've been missing," he said, turning to his board members. "This doesn't feel like advertising, it feels like truth." But the board wasn't as easily convinced. They saw my age, my junior position, and their skepticism was written across their faces like a billboard. My mentor, Diane Richards, had been in the room that day. She was everything I wanted to be: a senior creative director with 30 years of experience and a wall full of awards. She'd taken me under her wing, or so I thought, teaching me the ins and outs of the business. After the meeting, she pulled me aside with what seemed like motherly concern. "You did well today, sweetie, but let me handle the follow-up. These old boys need someone with gravitas to seal the deal." I trusted her. That was my mistake. In the follow-up meeting that I wasn't invited to, Diane presented my ideas as a collaborative effort where she'd done the heavy lifting and I'd merely assisted with some of the visual elements. She told the board I was talented, but green, needing several more years of seasoning before handling an account of this magnitude. The second betrayal cut deeper because it came from someone I'd considered a professional mother figure. What Diane didn't know was that I'd started recording our brainstorming sessions on my phone. It was perfectly legal in our state, and I'd initially done it to review our discussions and improve my skills. Those recordings became my salvation when I discovered her deception through a sympathetic colleague who'd been in the room. I presented the evidence to David Chin, directly playing back hours of recordings where every major concept had originated from my suggestions, while Diane contributed nothing but vague encouragement and coffee orders. The fallout was swift and brutal. I won the account, but I'd made an enemy of one of the most powerful women in advertising. Diane didn't go quietly. She spread rumors throughout the industry that I was a backstabber who secretly recorded colleagues conveniently leaving out her attempted theft. When that didn't stick, she pivoted to suggesting I must have slept my way into the CEO's good graces, because how else could someone so young land such a massive account? The third betrayal came from the person who should have defended me against these accusations. Marcus Chen, my boyfriend of 2 years and a fellow creative at a competing agency, saw an opportunity in my misfortune. He publicly sided with Diane at an industry mixer, saying he'd noticed concerning ambition in me that made him question my ethics. Within a week, he was dating Diane's protege and had landed a promotion that everyone knew was a reward for his betrayal. "It's just business, Rach," he texted me, as if that justified throwing away 2 years and my reputation for a corner office. 3 months into working on the Morrison Technologies campaign, my parents invited me to Sunday dinner. They'd been distant since Madison's engagement announcement, barely acknowledging my existence at family gatherings, so the invitation felt suspicious. I should have trusted my instincts. I arrived to find not just my parents, but Madison and Brett already seated at the dining room table like a tribunal. The staged intervention feel was completed by the awkward way they all stopped talking when I walked in. "Sit down, Rachel," my father said in his lawyer voice, the one he used for difficult clients. "We need to discuss your future." My mother had prepared all my childhood favorites, which should have been another warning sign. Manipulation in our family always came served with comfort food. As I picked at my pot roast, the real purpose of the dinner revealed itself. Brett, in his calculated business casual attire, leaned forward with practiced concern. "Rachel, I want to help you. I'm offering you a position as my executive assistant. It's a real career with benefits, stability, and growth potential. You'd be making twice what you're probably earning now with whatever freelance work you're doing." The condescension dripped from every word, but it was the synchronized nodding from my parents and Madison that made my stomach turn. They'd rehearsed this, planned every detail of their intervention. When I politely declined explaining I was happy with my current career path, the gloves came off. "You're embarrassing this family," my mother said, tears that appeared on cue rolling down her cheeks. "Do you know what I tell people when they ask what you do? I lie, Rachel. I tell them you're in marketing because I can't bear to admit my daughter is almost 30 and still playing with crayons. The fourth betrayal was learning just how deep those lies went. My cousin Jasmine, who'd been hiding in the hallway later, told me she'd overheard my mother on the phone with relatives spinning elaborate tales about my unemployment and suggesting I might be involved in questionable activities to afford my apartment. I just don't know where we went wrong with her, my mother had sobbed to my aunt. Madison turned out so well, but Rachel, I think she might be selling things online. You know those feet pictures or whatever desperate girls do these days. My father delivered the killing blow with his ultimatum. Your grandmother left you both inheritance money for your futures. Madison invested hers wisely in Brett's company. You have two choices, Rachel. Take Brett's job offer and prove you're serious about your life, or we'll have to consider Madison's request to redirect your portion to her as well. After all, she's the one actually building something. The room went silent, except for the sound of Jasmine's phone recording everything from her hiding spot. I found my voice through the shock. You already gave her my inheritance, didn't you? Madison's satisfied smile told me everything. It was a family investment in success, she said. Brett's company is going to change the world. Your little doodles were never going to amount to anything, and we all knew it. I was doing you a favor saving you from wasting Grandma's money on more art supplies. I learned that night that my parents had hired a private investigator to look into my life, convinced by Madison that I must be doing something shameful to survive. The investigator found nothing because there was nothing to find, just a young woman working 100-hour weeks to build her career. But the fact that they'd rather believe I was a sex worker than a successful creative told me everything I needed to know about my place in this family. As I stood to leave, Brett couldn't resist one more dig. The offer stands, Rachel. When your little art project fails, and it will, I'll still need someone to manage my calendar. Though by then I might have to offer you a more junior position. Jasmine caught up with me in the driveway, showing me the full recording on her phone. I'm sending this to you, she said, hugging me tight. They're wrong about you, and someday they'll have to face that. She was the only family member who saw me for who I really was, not who they needed me to be to feel better about themselves. 3 months before Madison's engagement party, everything I'd worked for almost came crashing down. The Morrison Technologies campaign was in final preparations for launch when Diane Richards orchestrated her most vicious attack yet. She contacted David Chen directly with a dossier of false allegations about my professional conduct, complete with fabricated emails and testimonials from people I'd never met, claiming I'd stolen their ideas throughout my career. The timing was surgically precise. With tens of millions of dollars committed to the campaign and launch dates locked in, any scandal would be catastrophic for both the agency and Morrison Technologies. David called an emergency meeting where I sat across from a panel of executives who looked at me like I was a criminal they'd mistakenly let into their building. The fifth betrayal revealed itself when my assistant Kate, whom I'd personally mentored and fought to get promoted, walked into the room with more evidence against me. I'd taught her everything she knew, stayed late to help her with projects, and even recommended her for a raise just months earlier. Now she stood there claiming I'd forced her to do all the real work while I took credit painting a picture of a tyrannical boss who built success on the backs of others. I have emails, Kate said, producing printouts that I immediately recognized as doctored. She made me sign concepts with her name, threatening to fire me if I didn't comply. The hurt of her betrayal was almost physical, watching someone I'd considered a little sister drive knives into my back for the promise of advancement. I had 72 hours to save my career and the campaign that represented everything I'd worked toward. Sleep became a distant memory as I compiled evidence of my innocence. My friend Samuel from IT became my lifeline, helping me trace the digital footprints of the false allegations. We discovered Kate had been feeding information to Diane for months, screenshots of my concepts sent minutes after I'd shared them with her private conversations about strategy forwarded within hours. The email trail revealed the full conspiracy. Diane had promised Kate my position once I was disgraced, painting a picture of rapid advancement and industry recognition. "Rachel's young and trusting," Diane had written. "She won't see it coming until it's too late. Play the devoted assistant until I give the signal." But Diane had made a crucial error in her confidence. The fake emails she'd created contained metadata proving they were generated after the dates they claimed to be sent. Samuel helped me compile a forensic report that not only cleared my name but exposed the entire scheme. We found more than just evidence of the plot against me. Diane's history revealed a pattern of stealing from junior creatives throughout her career. Settlements quietly paid by agencies to make problems go away. Reputations destroyed to hide her own creative bankruptcy. The sixth betrayal came from an unexpected source. Gloria Matthews, a family friend who'd been like an aunt to me growing up, had been feeding information to my parents about my work situation. She worked in PR at a competing agency and had heard industry gossip about the allegations against me. Instead of reaching out to offer support or get my side of the story, she'd called my mother with breathless updates about how I was about to be exposed as a fraud. "I always knew that girl was too ambitious for her own good," she'd told my parents. "Madison would never get herself into such a mess." Madison had seized on this information with glee, using Brett's business connections to spread the rumors further through tech and business circles. By the time I walked into that emergency meeting, half the industry had heard some version of the story where I was either a thief, a liar, or both. Brett's investor friends were particularly vocal on social media, questioning how Morrison Technologies could trust their brand to someone with such questionable ethics. The vindication when it came was total but exhausting. I presented my evidence to the board, watching their expressions shift from skepticism to shock to anger as they realized they'd been played. Diane was escorted from the building that same day, her 30-year career ending in disgrace. Kate begged for forgiveness, claiming Diane had manipulated her, but I was done with false apologies. I had her transferred to our satellite office in Detroit, far from any projects that mattered. David Chin personally apologized for doubting me, but the damage to my reputation took months to fully repair. Every meeting came with sideways glances, every success with whispered questions about whether I'd really earned it. I threw myself into the work with even more determination, knowing that the campaign's success would be my ultimate vindication. What I didn't know was that the universe was preparing a much more public form of justice than I could have imagined. 4 weeks before Madison's engagement party, I received the call that changed everything. David Chin's voice was electric with excitement as he delivered the news. "Rachel, I need you to sit down for this. The board just voted unanimously. Your campaign for Morrison Technologies has been selected for a Super Bowl spot. Do you understand what this means? You're about to become one of the youngest creative directors to ever land a Super Bowl commercial." I sat in stunned silence in my apartment, the same one Madison had mocked, now feeling like the center of the universe. The Super Bowl was the holy grail of advertising, the spot every creative dreamed of but few ever achieved. Companies spent millions just for the airtime, and being chosen meant your work was considered the absolute best of the best. "There's more," David continued. "We want to feature you in our behind-the-scenes marketing. The story of the young creative who reimagined our brand is exactly the kind of narrative that reinforces our transformation. Your face is going to be everywhere, Rachel. Magazines, billboards, business shows. You're about to become the poster child for innovative advertising." I made the conscious decision not to tell my family. They wouldn't have believed me anyway, and I was tired of giving them opportunities to diminish my achievements. Instead, I focused on the work perfecting every frame of the commercial that would air to over 100 million viewers. The secrecy became a protective shield, allowing me to enjoy my success without their poison seeping in. Diane's final attempt at destroying me came in the form of a formal complaint to the Advertising Standards Board. She alleged ethical violations, idea theft, and conduct unbecoming of a professional. It was a desperate move from a desperate woman, but it required a legal response. My agency hired Rebecca Sterling, one of the best lawyers in the business, to handle the matter. Rebecca's investigation into Diane uncovered a trail of destruction spanning 3 decades. Junior creatives whose ideas she'd stolen assistance she'd blackmailed into silence, entire campaigns built on the uncredited work of others. 3 former employers had paid substantial settlements to keep her victims quiet. The advertising board not only dismissed her complaint, but opened a formal investigation into her entire career. By the time Madison was picking flower arrangements, Diane was facing potential criminal charges for fraud. The 7th betrayal felt almost predictable by that point. Madison had convinced our extended family not to invite me to our cousin Jennifer's wedding, claiming I'd become unstable and might cause a scene. "She's going through something," Madison told everyone, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Recent professional failures have made her bitter and unpredictable. It's better if she takes some time to find herself." I found out about the wedding through social media, watching my entire family celebrate without me. Madison prominently featured in every photo as the devoted cousin and sister who had it all together. The hurt was real, but it was also freeing. They'd shown me exactly where I stood, and it released me from any obligation to consider their feelings in my success. My work started appearing in major publications, but I used my professional name, R. Morrison, which my family never connected to me. Adweek called the campaign revolutionary. The Wall Street Journal featured it as a case study in successful rebranding. Marketing professors at Harvard were using it in their courses, the same Harvard where Madison had learned to look down on creativity as lesser than law or business. Meanwhile, Brett's startup was hemorrhaging money. His revolutionary app that was going to change the world was just another failed attempt at solving a problem no one had. The tech blogs that had once praised him were now questioning his burn rate and lack of user adoption. He needed Madison's family money more than ever, which explained why their wedding planning had become increasingly desperate and ostentatious. They needed to project success to attract more investors using our grandmother's money that should have been mine to maintain a facade of prosperity. Kate tried reaching out multiple times, sending long emails about how sorry she was and how Diane had manipulated her. I never responded. Some bridges once burned weren't meant to be rebuilt. Instead, I channeled my energy into preparing for the moment when all the secrets would come to light. Samuel had helped me document everything, creating a paper trail that would prove invaluable when the truth finally emerged. The week before the engagement party, Jasmine called with barely contained excitement. "I have a surprise for you," she said. "Just promise me you'll come to Madison's party. I know it's the last place you want to be, but trust me, you need to be there." She worked in media event planning and had connections everywhere. "I've arranged something special. Let's just say Madison's party is going to be more memorable than she planned." I almost said no. The thought of facing my family's condescension and Madison's gloating felt like voluntary torture. But something in Jasmine's voice made me reconsider. She'd been my only ally through everything, the one person who'd documented the truth when everyone else was content with lies. If she said I needed to be there, then I would be their armor firmly in place for whatever fresh humiliation my family had planned. The Hamilton estate sprawled across 40 acres of manicured perfection, the kind of place that whispered old money even though Brett's family wealth was barely 2 generations deep. I arrived fashionably late to Madison's engagement party wearing a simple black dress that had cost more than I used to make in a month, but looked effortlessly understated. Success, I'd learned, didn't need to announce itself with designer labels. 200 guests mingled on the vast lawn, a who's who of society pages and business journals. I recognized several clients from the advertising world, carefully avoiding eye contact as I made my way to the bar. I'd built my reputation back from Diane's attacks, but I wasn't ready for professional and personal worlds to collide just yet. Madison held court near the gazebo, resplendent in a dress that screamed its price tag, surrounded by sorority sisters and Harvard Law classmates who hung on her every word. She was mid-story when she spotted me, her smile shifting into something predatory. "Everyone, my baby sister Rachel is here," she announced, voice carrying across the lawn with practiced projection. "Still trying to make it in advertising, aren't you, sweetie?" The crowd turned to look at me with that particular mixture of pity and secondhand embarrassment reserved for family disappointments at otherwise perfect gatherings. Several people whispered behind raised champagne flutes, no doubt sharing whatever version of my story Madison had been spreading. I forced a smile and raised my own glass in acknowledgement, letting her have her moment. Brett appeared at Madison's side, wrapping a possessive arm around her waist. "Rachel, so glad you could take time away from your little projects to celebrate with us." The emphasis on little was subtle but intentional. "You know my offer still stands if you ever want to join the winning team. Though I should mention I've had to adjust the salary down a bit. Market conditions, you understand." "Thank you, Brett." I managed voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. "I'm quite happy where I am." "Of course you are," Madison interjected, her Harvard-trained voice cutting through the evening air. "Everyone needs their hobbies. Remember, Rachel is the creative one in the family. She draws the most adorable little pictures. Some of them even move." The laughter that followed was polite but cruel, the sound of 200 people dismissing my entire existence as a charming family quirk. She wasn't done. Madison had prepared a speech because of course she had. Tapping her champagne flute for attention, she launched into what could only be described as a masterclass in passive-aggressive sibling rivalry. "I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our love," she began, gazing adoringly at Brett. "Growing up, I always knew I was destined for great things. Harvard Law partnership at a top firm by 30, and now marriage to the most brilliant entrepreneur of his generation. Every achievement was punctuated with a glance in my direction, making sure I understood that this performance was for my benefit. Success," she continued, "isn't just about dreams. It's about disciplined dedication and knowing when to put aside childish things for real accomplishment. Some of us learn that early. Others, well, we can only hope they'll find their way eventually." The speech went on for 15 excruciating minutes, a greatest hits compilation of Madison's achievements from kindergarten through her engagement, each anecdote carefully chosen to highlight the gulf between us. The crowd ate it up, applauding at all the right moments, shooting me sympathetic looks that felt worse than outright disdain. I was planning my escape when Jasmine appeared at my elbow, practically vibrating with anticipation. "Stay right here," she whispered. "The best part is about to start." Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, weaving through the crowd toward the AV setup near the main house. The massive outdoor screen behind the band, which had been displaying romantic photos of Madison and Brett all evening, suddenly shifted to a professionally produced title card, "This year's most innovative advertising campaigns." Madison glanced at it with mild annoyance, probably assuming Brett had arranged some corporate entertainment for his business associates. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine's voice came through the speakers, her media training evident in every polished word. "Before we continue celebrating this beautiful couple, let's take a moment to appreciate some of the year's finest creative achievements in the business world. After all, success comes in many forms." The screen began playing a montage of commercials, each more impressive than the last. I recognized them all from industry publications' award shows, the kind of work that made other creatives quit their jobs in despair or inspiration. The crowd watched with the detached interest of people who consumed advertising without thinking about the minds behind it. Then the Morrison Technologies logo appeared and my heart stopped. My commercial began playing on that massive screen, every frame I'd agonized over now displayed in cinematic perfection. But it wasn't just the commercial. Jasmine had somehow gotten the behind-the-scenes footage, including interviews with David Chen, praising the visionary young creative who'd saved his company. The climax came when my face filled the screen, my name in letters that seemed 50 feet tall, Rachel Morrison, Creative Director. The commercial continued playing, but the damage was done. 200 heads swiveled between the screen and me like spectators at the world's most awkward tennis match. Someone dropped a champagne flute, the shatter punctuating the sudden silence. Madison's face cycled through expressions like a slot machine before landing on pure horror. Brett's arm fell from her waist as he stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. His mouth opening and closing without sound. My parents, standing near the catering table, looked like they'd been turned to stone. My mother's hand frozen halfway to her mouth with an uneaten canapé. The commercial ended with the tagline that had been quoted in every marketing publication for months: Morrison Technologies Reimagined by Rachel Morrison. The screen faded to black, then immediately lit up with accolades: Adweek's Campaign of the Year, a Clio Award selection for the Super Bowl. Each honor appeared with my name prominently attached a resume that no amount of sisterly condescension could diminish. The silence stretched until someone began clapping. David Chen himself, whom I hadn't even noticed among the guests, stepped forward with slow, deliberate applause. "That brilliant young woman," he announced to the stunned crowd, "single-handedly saved my company. We were weeks away from bankruptcy when Rachel Morrison walked into our boardroom with an idea that revolutionized not just our marketing but our entire corporate identity." The dam broke. Industry professionals in the crowd surged toward me with congratulations and business cards. People who'd looked at me with pity minutes earlier now wanted to know if I was taking new clients. Someone mentioned their company needed exactly this kind of revolutionary thinking. Another asked if I was available for speaking engagements. Madison tried to salvage the situation with a laugh that fooled no one. "Why didn't you tell us about this success, Rachel? We're your family." The audacity of that question in front of everyone who'd just witnessed her public humiliation of me sparked something I'd kept buried for years. "Tell you?" I asked, voice carrying clearly across the lawn. "Like when I told you about my promotion and you said it was probably a pity hire, or when I shared my first award and you accused me of sleeping with the judges. When exactly should I have told you, Madison? During the family dinner where you stole my inheritance, or maybe while you were spreading lies about me being unemployed." Brett attempted damage control. "This is obviously a misunderstanding. Madison has always supported her sister's career choices." The lie was so blatant that several people actually laughed. One of Brett's investor friends, a Silicon Valley heavyweight I recognized from tech publications, abandoned his conversation to approach me. "You're the R. Morrison behind the Morrison Tech campaign I've been trying to poach you for months. My entire board is obsessed with your work." The revelation rippled through Brett's network. Several investors began asking pointed questions about his burn rate, his user acquisition costs, the sustainability of his business model. Without Madison there to deflect with charm and family money, Brett's answers revealed the hollow core of his supposed empire. One investor pulled out his phone, openly checking Brett's latest financials with a frown that promised difficult conversations ahead. My mother finally found her voice. "Rachel, sweetheart, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us about this wonderful success?" The tears in her eyes might have moved me once, but I'd learned to recognize manipulation in all its forms. "You had a private investigator following me," I reminded her. "You told our entire extended family I was probably selling inappropriate pictures online. You chose to believe I was a sex worker rather than successful. That's not a communication problem, Mother. That's a you problem." Gloria, the family friend who'd poisoned them against me, tried to slip away unnoticed, but Jasmine intercepted her with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Leaving so soon, but we haven't even gotten to the part where you took money from Madison to discourage Rachel. Oh, did you think she didn't keep those Venmo receipts? The party dissolved into chaos. Madison's sorority sisters suddenly remembered other commitments. Harvard law classmates discovered urgent emails requiring immediate attention. Brett's investors formed a cluster near the valet, their animated discussion peppered with terms like due diligence and fraudulent projections. Madison made one last desperate attempt at control. "This is still my engagement party," she announced to the rapidly diminishing crowd. "Whatever success my sister may have stumbled into doesn't change the fact that Brett and I are building a future together." About that, one of Brett's partners called out, phone in hand. "I just got word from our primary investor. They're pulling out. Something about misrepresentation of assets and falsified user metrics. Brett, we need to talk. Now." The color drained from Brett's face as he looked at Madison, and I saw the exact moment he realized her family money might not be enough to save his sinking ship. The grand alliance between the Golden Child and the Tech Prince was crumbling in real time, their mutual parasitism exposed under the harsh light of reality. As the party imploded around us, Jasmine appeared at my side with 2 fresh champagne flutes. "To creative revenge," she toasted quietly, "and to family members who actually deserve the title." I clinked my glass against hers, watching Madison's perfect evening transform into a perfectly orchestrated disaster. The screen behind her still displayed my name and achievements, a backdrop to her humiliation that no amount of Harvard education could argue away. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the Morrison sister who needed pity. I was the one who'd earned envy, and the reversal tasted sweeter than Madison's overpriced champagne. The aftermath of the engagement party spread through our social circles like wildfire. Within hours, the story had evolved from whispered gossip to full-blown scandal. "Did you hear about the Morrison sisters?" became the opening line at brunches and business meetings across the city. But the real reckoning came in the days that followed as the facade my family had carefully constructed began to crumble. Madison attempted damage control with the determination of someone who'd never faced real failure. She called an emergency family meeting 3 days after the party, sending a group text that read like a legal summons. "We need to discuss the deliberate sabotage of my engagement celebration. Rachel's theatrical display requires addressing." I arrived at our childhood home to find my parents flanking Madison on the couch like bodyguards protecting damaged goods. Brett was notably absent, reportedly in emergency meetings trying to salvage what remained of his company after the investor exodus. The power dynamic had shifted so dramatically that walking into that living room felt like entering an alternate universe. "You planned that whole thing," Madison accused before I'd even sat down. "You deliberately humiliated me at my own party. What kind of sister does that?" The question hung in the air, begging for the honest answer I'd swallowed for years. The kind of sister who was told she'd never amount to anything. The kind who had her inheritance stolen to fund your fiancé's failing company. The kind who was uninvited from family events because her success didn't fit your narrative. That kind of sister Madison. My mother tried her usual emotional manipulation. "Rachel, we're family. Whatever misunderstandings we've had, surely you can see how your actions hurt Madison on what should have been her special day." Misunderstandings. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to Jasmine's recordings. "Let me refresh your memory about these misunderstandings." The audio of that awful dinner filled the room, their own voices condemning them as they heard their cruelty played back. My father threatening my inheritance, my mother's tears about her embarrassment, Madison's smugness about already taking my money. The silence after the recording ended was different from their usual dismissive quiet. This was the silence of people realizing they'd been caught, documented, exposed. No amount of gaslighting could erase their own words thrown back at them. That was taken out of context. Madison tried weakly, but even she didn't believe it. The context, I said, standing to leave, was a lifetime of being treated as less than because my success didn't look like yours. The context was choosing to believe I was a failure rather than celebrating my achievements. The context was theft, Madison. You stole from me and everyone knows it now. My father, the lawyer, who always had an argument ready, simply stared at his hands. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who'd taught Madison to debate couldn't find words to defend their actions. My mother's tears were real this time, but they were tears of shame, not manipulation. Over the following weeks, the consequences cascaded through their carefully ordered lives. Several relatives who'd been poisoned against me reached out with apologies, sharing how Madison had painted me as unstable, unsuccessful, ungrateful. My cousin Sarah revealed that Madison had been collecting money from family members claiming it was for an intervention to help me get my life together. That money, unsurprisingly, had gone straight into Brett's company. Brett himself became a cautionary tale in tech circles. The deeper investors looked into his books, the more creative accounting they discovered. My grandmother's inheritance hadn't been invested. It had been burned through in a desperate attempt to create the illusion of success. The wedding once planned as a 500-guest extravaganza quietly downsized to a courthouse ceremony that made it into the society pages for all the wrong reasons. Gloria, the family friend who'd betrayed me, faced her own reckoning when word of her paid sabotage spread through the advertising community. Taking money to spread lies about a colleague crossed every ethical line in our industry. Her agency quietly let her go, citing restructuring, but everyone knew the real reason. She sent me a long, rambling apology email that I deleted unread. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding no matter how much the arsonist regretted lighting the match. 6 months later, my second campaign launched to even greater acclaim. This time, my family watched from the sidelines as my name appeared in headlines on award stages in business school case studies. The Morrison who'd made it into Harvard textbooks wasn't the lawyer. It was the creative they'd dismissed as a failure. Madison reached out a year after the party with what seemed like a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Her marriage to Brett had lasted exactly as long as his remaining investors' patience ending when the last funding round failed to materialize. She was rebuilding her life, she said, and wanted to rebuild our relationship too. I was so jealous, she admitted over coffee at a neutral location. Everything came easy to me until it didn't. School law, even Brett. I thought I was building this perfect life, but it was all performance. You built something real while I was building a facade, and I couldn't stand it. I'm sorry, Rachel. Not for my image, not for our parents, but genuinely sorry for the sister I should have been. I appreciated the apology, even believed it was sincere, but trust was harder to rebuild than campaigns or careers. We established cordial boundaries, the kind of relationship where we could share holidays without sharing lives. She was working at a legal aid clinic using her Harvard education to help people who actually needed it, rather than corporations that could pay the most. It suited her better than the power suits and prideful speeches ever had. My parents struggled more with the new dynamic. They'd spent so long seeing me as the problem child that accepting my success required rewiring their entire worldview. Family dinners became exercises in careful conversation, avoiding the landmines of past betrayals while trying to build something new. When my third campaign won an international award, my father finally said the words I'd waited decades to hear. We were wrong about you, Rachel. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. The Morrison Technologies relationship evolved into something deeper than client and creative. David Chin became a mentor and friend, someone who'd believed in me when my own family couldn't. He hired me to teach a masterclass at Harvard Business School, the same Harvard where Madison had learned to look down on creativity. The irony of teaching MBAs about innovation while my sister's Harvard law degree gathered dust wasn't lost on anyone. I started the Rebecca Morrison Foundation with the inheritance money Madison was forced to return after legal pressure. The foundation provides scholarships and mentorship for young creatives from families who don't understand or support their artistic ambitions. Every year, I meet brilliant kids whose parents want them to be doctors or lawyers or anything but artists, and I tell them what I wished someone had told me: success doesn't always look like what your family expects, and that's okay. The most unexpected outcome came from Kate, my former assistant, who'd betrayed me. 2 years after the Diane incident, she sent a letter through my lawyer. Not an email, not a text, but a handwritten letter that must have taken hours to craft. She'd used her time in Detroit to reflect on her choices, to understand how easily she'd been manipulated, how quickly she'd traded integrity for ambition. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or her job back. She just wanted me to know that my mentorship before her betrayal had meant everything to her, and she was trying to be the kind of creative I'd taught her to be before Diane corrupted that vision. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter. It reminded me that everyone was capable of both betrayal and redemption, that success could corrupt as easily as failure could inspire. The advertising world was full of Dianes and Kates, but also Davids and Jasmines. Learning to recognize the difference had been as crucial to my success as any creative vision. Looking back now from the vantage point of established success, I can see that every betrayal pushed me toward something better. Madison's cruelty made me financially independent. Diane's sabotage taught me to document everything. My parents' dismissal freed me from seeking their approval. Brett's condescension motivated me to build something he could never touch. Even Marcus's betrayal had silver lining, showing me that professional success meant nothing if you sacrificed your integrity to achieve it. The biggest lesson wasn't about proving doubters wrong or achieving visible success. It was about understanding that family isn't always blood, that support sometimes comes from unexpected places, and that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so authentic and fulfilling that the opinions of those who doubted you simply cease to matter. Madison was wrong when she said I'd never be successful, but she was also wrong about what success meant. It wasn't the awards or the money or seeing my face on that big screen at her engagement party, though those moments certainly didn't hurt. Success was Jasmine standing by me when the rest of the family turned away. It was David Chin believing in a young creative with big ideas. It was every scholarship recipient who sent me updates about their first gallery showing or published work. Success was learning that the family who raises you isn't always the family who raises you up, and that's okay. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people who refuse to see your worth is succeed without them creating space for those who celebrate your light instead of trying to dim it. The girl who was once told she'd never amount to anything now sits on boards that decide what amounts to everything in advertising. I mentor young creatives who remind me of my self-talented kids whose families don't understand that creativity isn't a phase to outgrow, but a gift to nurture. When they doubt themselves because someone who should support them doesn't, I tell them about the engagement party where everything changed, not because of revenge or vindication, but because that was the night I finally stopped needing my family's validation to know my own worth. That's the real plot twist in this story. Not that the family disappointment became successful, but that success taught me family disappointment was never my story to own. It was theirs projected onto me because my dreams didn't match their definitions. The moment I stopped trying to fit into their narrow view of achievement was the moment I became free to achieve beyond their wildest imagination. As for what's next, I am developing a documentary series about creatives who succeeded despite family opposition, turning pain into purpose and doubt into determination. Madison actually offered to be interviewed for it, a full circle moment that would have seemed impossible at that engagement party. I haven't decided yet, but I'm leaning toward yes. Not for closure or forgiveness or any Hallmark movie ending, but because every story of transformation deserves to be told, even hers. The working title, Blood Isn't Always Thicker Than Dreams, A Creative's Guide to Chosen Family. My parents hate it, which is probably the best endorsement I could ask for. Some things never change, and maybe that's the most successful outcome of all, reaching a place where their opinion is just noise in the background of a life fully lived. To everyone watching who's been told they'll never make it, whose families see their dreams as disappointments, who've been betrayed by those who should believe in them most, your worth isn't determined by their limitations. Success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to do both on a big screen at an engagement party while drinking overpriced champagne. Now that's what I call creative direction. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the black sheep who became the success story, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. What was your big screen moment when doubters had to face your success? Don't forget to like this video if it spoke to you. Subscribe for more stories of triumph over family dysfunction and share it with someone who needs to hear that their dreams matter more than their family's doubts. Thank you for watching, and remember, the best revenge is a life well lived, preferably with documentary evidence and a really good lawyer.